Hello and happy Thursday on a Friday. I'm Generalist Gaming and I'm collaborating with Paradoxinteractive to bring you a tutorial on Victoria 3's new trading system, the World Market. The World Market is a complete overhaul and replacement of Victoria 3's previous market-to-market trade system that involved heavy micromanagement of individual trade routes. The global market is instead an automated system where the player will instead use various macro-strategic levers to execute their trade vision on a global stage. In this video, we will talk about how the global market works, the new tradable good Merchant Marine, trade centers, trade advantage, and the various levers through which the player engages with the new automated trade system. The world market is not a unified singular market for all goods. Nations still have national markets, or can be part of a trade block market, though these markets now are segmented into individual market areas based on contiguous land. So a nation like Great Britain will have several market areas, while Prussia, within its power block, will have a single unified market area of several nations. As long as a market area has a port, it will have access to the world market through the ocean. A market that does not have a port will not be able to access the world market, but you can negotiate a special treaty with another nation so as to gain access to the world market through their port. The engines of trade on the world market are fueled by trade centers, which are now a constructible building that can be privately owned. The building uses a new trade good, Merchant Marine, to produce trade capacity, which is then used to place trades in the world market. The trade center will attempt to do this by finding the trades with the biggest difference in value between local price and the world market price. After the world market price is modified by trade advantage. This differential will then be given to the trade center in revenue. How many trade centers you build will determine how much trade you do on the world market, but also where you build these trade centers matters, and these are two of the strategic levers you can use to influence automated trade. Goods that are imported are unloaded, and goods that are sold are shipped off in the state in which the trade is being done. And so both imports and exports will affect not just market prices, but also local prices. For example, Yaroslavl is a state in which we are producing quite a lot of wood. Normally this would collapse the local price of wood and make our logging camps here less profitable. However, we have quite a large trade center in Yaroslavl that is primarily exporting a lot of wood. If we take a look at local prices, we can see that Yaroslavl, as a result of trade, now actually has a higher price for wood than the rest of our market. We can see that, on the other side of the wood trade, France is one of the largest importers. If we look at the trade center of Île-de-France, we can see that they are importing a lot of wood. This is pushing down the local price of wood in the state, allowing industries like the paper mills there to have cheaper inputs and thus be more profitable. The ratio of buy and sell orders from trade centers on both sides of the trade are used to calculate prices on the world market. Because trade centers automatically seek the most profitable trades based on the difference between local prices and the world market price informs what nations, and more specifically, which of the trade centers within these nations, will enter or exit trade of that particular good, where high prices will encourage more trade centers to export and fewer to import, and low prices will encourage more trade centers to import and fewer to export. The input for trade centers, Merchant Marine, is produced in ports, which are now no longer exclusively government buildings, can be privately owned, and no longer have a building cap. Because the price of Merchant Marine affects the profitability of trade centers, this means that coastal provinces producing it will have a slight edge in trade. This slight edge turns into a significant one with the new reworked natural harbor bonuses, which among other things give throughput on ports and, more importantly, a local increase to trade capacity. Trade advantage is a new and important mechanic that allows you to influence how much yourself and others can make from trade. Trade advantage is calculated for each individual good in each individual state. A positive trade advantage will allow your trade center to sell a good at a price that's higher than the world market price, and buy goods for cheaper than the world market price, increasing profits on both kinds of routes. And a negative trade advantage will have the opposite effect, decreasing profit. The primary driver of trade advantage is that the bigger economic players get more of it. A market area's share of global production of a good will give it trade advantage in the export of that good. And conversely, a market area's share of global consumption of a good will give it trade advantage in the import of that good. Because it is market areas that inform advantage, a state in India might have a trade advantage in exporting opium, whereas a state in the British Isles, another market area in the British market, might not have a trade advantage in exporting opium. Whether or not trade advantage is positive depends on a trade center's score relative to other scores of other trade centers, making trade advantage a zero-sum game, and any value gained is done so by stepping over the bloodied economic bodies of your enemies. The average price of all trades is still the world market price, and any benefit a trade advantage gives, one trade center comes at the expense of another. Well, for the most part. Because of this, utilizing mechanics that influence trade advantage is another lever through which you can influence automated global trade. Having diplomatic interests where main buyers and sellers of a particular good are will give you trade advantage for that good, as will having trade privileges from a nation with which you conduct a large volume of trade of that good. And you could economically brutalize your enemies by hitting them with an embargo, which will be more effective the bigger a player you are in the world market in trading that particular good. Trade policy law also affects trade advantage. Mercantilism will help you keep goods out of your market. Protectionism will allow you the greatest flexibility in tariffs and subventions, which we'll talk about shortly. And free trade will give you a trade advantage bonus, but prevent you from tariffing. Notably, Great Qing has a unique isolationism trade policy law, the Canton system, which allows for a small amount of trade, but only in western Guangdong. The most powerful lever you have with which to influence automated trade is tariffs and subventions. You can apply either of these policies to both imports and exports. A tariff will force trade centers within your nation to pay the government for each trade of the tariffed good. This, from the perspective of the trade center, will effectively raise the price of any import and lower the price of any export. By doing this, the margin that the trade center can earn on that good is decreased, which will decrease the trade volume, as the difference in local price and world market price will need to be larger for trades of that good to be the most profitable trade available to that trade center. Subventions will have the opposite effect of tariffs, where the government will instead pay trade centers for each unit of the good traded. Take for instance this trade center in Yaroslavl. It is exporting an enormous amount of wood. It is doing this because of a subvention for wood here in Russia. You can see that there's 9.4k in subventions here, which might imply that, with costs of over 14,000 and not that much revenue, that the trade center would be completely unprofitable without the subvention. But this is not the case, or is unlikely to be. If you cancel the subvention, the trade center will instead create other, slightly less profitable trade routes other than trading wood, instead choosing to trade other goods. Though this will take some time as the trade center needs to wind down its sales of wood, and the world market buyers need to wind down their purchasing of wood. A treaty port can be a useful tool for overcoming the tariffs of others. Trade centers in the port operate as if they were part of the country from which they were taken's market, allowing you to freely conduct trade with it to your own home market. You can export goods from their market and import goods to it. Additionally, you will get trade advantage from trades done with that treaty port.